Chapter 1. The Lonely Millionaire. Ethan Blackwood stood silently by the expansive window of his luxurious penthouse, the lights of the city below casting a faint glow around his tall figure. Outside, life bustled on, but inside, Ethan was enveloped in a heavy stillness. He gripped a glass of wine tightly in his hand, his gaze fixed on the flickering city lights. A bitter reminder that the world would not stop even as his company teetered on the brink of collapse. Blackwood Enterprises had once been a symbol of success, leading the technology sector with groundbreaking projects. But everything began to unravel with the catastrophic failure of its latest venture, an ambitious artificial intelligence system aimed at shaping the future. Investments drained, stock prices plummeted, and Ethan's reputation as a brilliant entrepreneur was now nothing more than a shadow of its former glory. Ethan was an arrogant and authoritarian man. He was not accustomed to compromise or seeking help. To him, the world was divided into the strong and the weak. Yet for the first time in his life, Ethan felt himself losing control. The helplessness made him irritable and quick to anger, a change that even his closest team members could not ignore. The door to his office opened, and Charles Harris, his longtime financial advisor, walked in. The middle-aged man with a serious expression carried a thick folder of documents. Placing it on the table, Charles looked at Ethan and spoke in a calm but firm voice. "Ethan, we need to act immediately. Hosting an investor gala is the only solution to save the company." Ethan turned, his cold eyes locking onto Charles. "A gala? You think I'll stand in front of a room full of strangers and try to convince them to throw money at a failing company?" Charles didn't back down. Adjusting his glasses, he spoke each word clearly. "It's not just about convincing them. It's about building trust. Investors don't just want to see your business acumen. They want to see a complete picture. A reliable man, stable in both work and personal life. You need a girlfriend, or better yet, a wife." Charles's words hit Ethan's pride like a punch. He slammed his glass onto the table, wine splashing across the surface. "Charles, you're telling me to fake a happy life? I don't do that kind of thing." Charles remained calm, though his voice grew more insistent. "Ethan, if you don't adapt, this company won't survive the winter. Investors need to believe that you're not just a capable founder, but also a responsible and steady individual. That could make all the difference." Ethan was silent, his piercing gaze drilling into Charles. He didn't want to admit it, but Charles's words made sense. Finally, he let out a heavy sigh. "I don't have a girlfriend, and I'm not getting married just to impress them." Charles shrugged, offering a slight smile. "Then hire someone. There are plenty of people in this world willing to do it if the price is right." Ethan frowned, irritation flickering in his chest. But deep within, an idea began to take shape. A bold plan he was reluctant to acknowledge, yet one he couldn't ignore. As the city lights continued to sparkle outside, Ethan realized he had few choices left. Turning back to the window, his cold blue eyes now glimmered with determination. Though he despised the idea of conceding, Ethan knew that to save his company, he would have to push beyond his own boundaries. Welcome to today's story. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any of our meaningful videos. Chapter 2. An Unexpected Encounter. Ethan Blackwood slowly drove his luxury car through the poor neighborhoods, where dim streetlights reflected off the smudged glass windows of small shops. He hadn't planned to stop, but the persistent growling of his stomach compelled him to pull into an old KFC restaurant on the corner. A rare occurrence for a man like him, accustomed to high-end restaurants and dinners prepared by private chefs. Stepping inside, Ethan was immediately overwhelmed by the aroma of fried chicken and the noise of chattering customers. The cramped, fluorescent-lit space was a stark contrast to the opulent world he knew. He walked straight to the counter where a young woman was busily serving customers. Elena Sanchez, petite but quick and energetic, with bright eyes and her hair neatly tied back, was boxing up food while laughing with a little boy standing nearby. However, when she turned to Ethan, the smile on her face faltered slightly. "Are you here to order, or just to complain about the service?" Elena asked bluntly, her tone slightly challenging. Ethan paused, his cold gaze sweeping over her. He wasn't used to being addressed this way. Most people either bowed in deference or tried to please him. But this girl standing behind the KFC counter seemed entirely unimpressed by his expensive suit or luxury watch. "A number 3 fried chicken combo," Ethan replied evenly. Elena raised an eyebrow, quickly punching the order into the register, and placed the tray in front of him without so much as a glance back. As Ethan walked away, he couldn't stop himself from glancing at her again. The way she moved, her energy, and her confidence in every word and gesture intrigued him. A bold idea sparked in his mind. That night, as the clock neared midnight, Ethan drove back to the KFC. Elena, cleaning the counter after a long day, widened her eyes in surprise when she saw the afternoon customer return. "Lost your way?" "We're closed," Elena said, not bothering to hide her fatigue. Ethan stepped forward, his expression serious. "I need your help." Elena squinted at him, her face skeptical. "Help? Do you want me to fry chicken for you at home?" Ethan frowned but remained calm. "I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend for an important event. You will be generously compensated." Elena was silent for a few seconds before bursting into laughter. "Are you joking? Who hires a KFC worker to pretend to be their girlfriend?" "I do," Ethan replied firmly. "You're smart, straightforward, and unafraid to confront people. I need someone like that." The determination in Ethan's eyes silenced Elena's laughter, but she still shook her head. "No way. I have enough problems as it is. I don't need more trouble." Ethan didn't give up. He explained the dire situation at his company, the upcoming investor gala, and how her presence could help him save his career. But Elena remained unmoved. The next day, when Ethan returned to the restaurant, Elena couldn't hide her irritation. "Don't you have anything better to do?" "I don't give up easily. You need money, don't you?" Elena was about to retort, but Ethan's words stopped her. She did need money. Her brother Marco's tuition bills were piling up, and the hospital had just sent another invoice for her mother's recent treatment. Ethan noticed the hesitation in her eyes. "I'm not asking you to do anything beyond your capability. Just pretend to be my girlfriend for one night. I'll pay you enough to resolve all your financial problems." Elena sighed, torn between suspicion and temptation. She didn't trust this man, but the offer was too good to pass up. Finally, she bit her lip and nodded. "All right, but I have conditions. No unreasonable demands, and after the event, we have nothing to do with each other." Ethan smiled, his eyes gleaming with triumph. Deal. Though still uncertain about what she had gotten herself into, Elena couldn't have predicted that her life was about to change forever. Chapter 3. Transformation into a Lady. Elena stood in the middle of a grand room with a high ceiling adorned by glittering chandeliers. Around her, stylists, makeup artists, and fashion consultants busily worked on their respective tasks. One adjusted her long, wavy hair, another measured a gown on her body, while a language coach corrected every word and phrase in her pronunciation. She had never felt so out of place. Ethan stood nearby, arms crossed, observing everything. In his perfectly tailored suit, he looked like a marble sculpture, cold and flawless. Elena glanced at him, unable to hide her irritation at his controlling demeanor. "How does it feel?" Ethan asked in an even tone. Elena raised an eyebrow and replied bluntly, "Like I'm your doll." Ethan gave a faint smile, not entirely denying her comment. "You're preparing to enter a world where every move is scrutinized. If you want to succeed, you need to play this role perfectly." Elena didn't reply. She knew she had no choice. The money Ethan had promised was enough to pay off her debts and secure her brother's college education. But that didn't make her any less annoyed by Ethan's restrictions. The following days were a relentless series of training sessions. Elena learned how to walk in high heels, how to shake hands with confidence, and even how to smile in a way that was both subtle and captivating. "Don't smile too much," Ethan instructed during one session. "Women in this world don't need to appear overly friendly." Elena smirked. "Are women in this world even human?" Ethan chuckled faintly but didn't answer. Elena realized that behind his cold exterior was a trace of loneliness and exhaustion. There were moments when Ethan would pause mid-conversation, his gaze distant as if he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Do you ever take a break?" Elena asked one night, noticing him still working at midnight. Ethan looked up from a pile of documents, his eyes momentarily surprised. Rest won't save my company. Elena wanted to say something but held back. She could feel the heavy pressure in his words. Ethan wasn't just trying to save his company. He was also trying to salvage his image. A man who could never fail. The preparation process didn't just transform Elena. It also changed the way Ethan saw her. Initially, he had dismissed her as a mere KFC worker, a tool to help him deceive investors. But over time, he discovered that Elena was a strong woman with extraordinary resilience and a heart full of love for her family. He saw her diligently practicing her role, even though it was clear she despised everything about the pretense. He saw how she constantly reminded herself about the money she needed to help her brother and mother, and he realized that Elena was doing everything for the people she loved. "Why don't you quit?" Ethan asked one night as they rested after an exhausting day of training. Elena looked up, her gaze direct. "Because life doesn't give me that option." Her answer left Ethan speechless. He realized that unlike him, a man who had everything but was never satisfied, Elena had fought for survival with the little she had. A week later, Elena was ready. In a sleek black evening gown, she stepped out of the fitting room. Everyone on the team murmured in admiration, but Ethan stood quietly watching her. Elena felt his gaze but said nothing. She slowly walked toward him, her chin slightly raised. "So, have I met the millionaire's girlfriend standard yet?" Ethan studied her for a few more seconds before offering a faint smile. "Don't just meet the standard. Make them believe you're the only one who can stand by my side." Though his words carried a touch of arrogance, Elena recognized a newfound respect in Ethan that he had never shown her before. The gala was approaching, and both of them knew that the past days of preparation were only the beginning. The greatest challenge still lay ahead. Chapter 4. The Fateful Gala. The gala took place at the city's most luxurious hotel, where crystal chandeliers sparkled against the intricately decorated walls. Ethan Blackwood walked into the grand hall, his sturdy arm confidently holding Elena Sanchez, a woman who caused the entire room to fall silent for a moment. Elena wore a sleek black gown that clung to her figure, exuding elegance and allure without being overt. Her hair flowed freely, accentuating her delicate features. Ethan, in a perfectly tailored navy tuxedo, looked at her with a gaze that was not just proud, but also tinged with admiration. All eyes turned toward them, and whispers began to spread. "Who's the woman with Ethan Blackwood? They look perfect together. Who is she?" Despite her nervousness, Elena revealed no trace of unease. She clutched Ethan's arm, feeling the warmth of his hand, a subtle reminder that they were in this together. During the gala, Ethan introduced Elena to investors and partners. She quickly proved her confidence and charm. Elena shared amusing anecdotes about daily life, skillfully weaving in praises for Ethan without making them seem insincere. "Ethan is someone who never gives up," Elena told a group of investors. "Though his stubbornness sometimes drives me crazy, it's also why he achieves extraordinary things." Laughter echoed, and the initial skepticism in their eyes gradually turned into admiration. Standing beside her, Ethan couldn't help but feel captivated by the magnetic energy Elena was radiating. But among the crowd, one person was not easily convinced. Lucas Grant, a business rival and someone always eager to bring Ethan down. Lucas approached with a friendly smile that did not reach his calculating eyes. "Ethan, so good to see you here," Lucas said in a tone of feigned politeness. "And this must be Elena, the woman I've heard so much about." Elena offered a polite smile, extending her hand to shake his. "A pleasure, Lucas. I hope Ethan hasn't said anything bad about me." Lucas raised an eyebrow, seizing the opportunity to probe their relationship. Ethan isn't one to speak ill of others, but he also doesn't often talk about his personal life. "How long have you two known each other?" Ethan was about to respond, but Elena beat him to it. "We haven't known each other long, but sometimes it only takes a moment to understand someone better than a lifetime." Lucas chuckled, but his sharp gaze remained. "Really? I always thought Ethan was the type to keep people at arm's length. You must be quite special to have changed that." Elena didn't flinch. "I think my patience makes things easier sometimes, but Ethan is also someone who cares deeply." He just doesn't show it to everyone. Her clever words not only dispelled doubt, but also left Lucas embarrassed in front of those listening. The surrounding guests, overhearing the exchange, looked at Elena with newfound respect. Ethan and Elena left Lucas's group and moved to the bar area to catch their breath. Ethan turned to her, his blue eyes glimmering with amazement. "How did you do that?" he asked quietly. Elena took a sip of champagne and smiled confidently. "You didn't hire me just to wear a nice dress, did you?" Ethan chuckled, a rare, unguarded laugh he couldn't suppress. For the first time that night, he felt a sense of relief. Elena wasn't just fulfilling her role, she was exceeding every expectation he had. Meanwhile, Lucas stood from afar, his gaze fixed on them. A sinister smile played on his lips. "Let's see how long they can keep up this charade," Lucas muttered, his eyes glinting with scheming intent. Ethan and Elena had won a small victory, but the real battle was still ahead. Chapter 5. The Costly Lie. The gala was over, but its echoes still reverberated in Ethan Blackwood's mind. He stood in his private office, the soft glow of a desk lamp highlighting the sharp lines of his face. On the desk sat a glass of wine, untouched. His thoughts were tangled with images of Elena from the evening, her confident smile, her deft responses, and the captivating presence she exuded by his side. The door opened and Elena entered. She was still wearing her stunning red velvet gown, but the weariness on her face was unmistakable. Ethan turned, his eyes showing a mix of gratitude and something he dared not fully acknowledge. "Thank you," Ethan said, his voice low and sincere. "You were incredible. The investors couldn't stop singing your praises." Elena leaned against a chair, slipping off her high heels with visible relief. "That's what you paid for, isn't it?" she replied, her tone tinged with sarcasm. Ethan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Not everyone could have pulled it off like you did. I don't think I could have achieved this without you." Elena looked at him, about to say something, but stopped. She could feel the sincerity in his words, but she didn't want to get drawn further into this world, a world where she didn't belong. In the days that followed, the investors began signing contracts. Ethan successfully secured Blackwood Enterprises' future, but Elena's presence seemed to have left an indelible mark on his life. He no longer saw her as just playing a role. She was a strong, determined woman who had entered his world and shaken it to its core. For Elena, things weren't so simple. She felt herself being pulled into a whirlwind she couldn't control. She knew her role was temporary, but every time she met Ethan's gaze, she felt something different, something she was too afraid to name. Meanwhile, Lucas Grant, despite failing to humiliate Ethan at the gala, wasn't ready to give up. He knew something was off about Ethan and Elena, and he was determined to expose the truth. One afternoon, Lucas waited outside the KFC where Elena used to work, his eyes narrowing as he saw her step out after her shift. "Miss Sanchez," Lucas called, approaching with a fake smile. "Do you have a moment? I'd like to talk." Elena turned, her gaze cautious. "I don't think we have anything to talk about." "Oh, I think we do," Lucas replied smoothly, his tone dripping with insinuation. "I wanted to ask about your relationship with Ethan Blackwood. Quite fascinating, isn't it? From a KFC employee to the girlfriend of a millionaire." Elena tightened her grip on her bag, struggling to remain composed. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't worry, I'm not your enemy," Lucas continued, though his calculating eyes betrayed him. "I'm just curious, care to share how someone like you managed to catch Ethan Blackwood's attention?" Elena immediately realized Lucas was trying to trap her. She took a deep breath and replied coolly, "I think whatever Ethan and I have isn't any of your business. If you want to know more, perhaps you should ask him directly." Lucas laughed, but there was no friendliness in it. "You're clever, Elena, but cleverness won't save you forever. I'll find out the truth." Later that evening, Lucas continued to shadow Elena, following her to a small cafe. When he saw her sitting alone, he approached her, this time intent on forcing the truth out of her. "Elena, I'll be blunt," Lucas said, sitting across from her. "I know you and Ethan are putting on a show. Someone like you doesn't belong in that world. Admit it." Elena opened her mouth to protest, but before she could, Ethan appeared. He strode into the cafe with a piercing gaze, heading straight for their table. "Lucas," Ethan said, his voice low and dangerous, "I don't believe you have the right to bother my girlfriend." Lucas offered a challenging smile, but Ethan's unyielding stare made him hesitate. "It's just a friendly conversation, Ethan." "I think you've made yourself clear enough," Ethan said, his eyes never leaving Lucas. "She has nothing to say to you, and if you continue bothering her, this will escalate beyond conversation." Lucas stood, straightening his tie with a smug grin. "Understood, but remember, Ethan, the truth always finds a way out." As Lucas left, Elena looked at Ethan, her emotions in turmoil. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. Ethan turned to her, his gaze protective in a way that surprised her. "I won't let anyone hurt you, not because they're trying to bring me down." Elena remained silent, realizing that while Ethan's words seemed self-serving, the concern he showed for her was genuine. The boundaries between their act and their true feelings were beginning to blur, a truth neither of them was ready to admit. Chapter 6. The Truth Unveiled. The atmosphere in the Blackwood Enterprises boardroom was taut like a string pulled to its limit. The glass walls surrounding the room reflected the cold light, creating a suffocating tension for anyone entering. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his face calm, though his eyes betrayed his unease. Elena sat silently beside him, trying to mask the growing anxiety in her heart. Lucas Grant stood at the opposite end, wearing a triumphant smile. On the table before him was a thick folder, the result of the investigation he had quietly conducted. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lucas began, his smooth voice dripping with implication, "I regret to bring this to your attention, but I believe everyone here deserves to know the truth. Ethan Blackwood, the man we are considering investing in, has orchestrated a perfect facade to deceive us." Lucas opened the folder and pulled out a series of documents and photographs, spreading them across the table. Images of Elena in her KFC uniform, financial transaction records, and even recordings of her conversations with Lucas were laid out in stark detail. "The relationship between Ethan and Elena Sanchez is a fabrication," Lucas continued, his gaze sweeping over the room full of investors. "She is not his real girlfriend, but an employee hired to play the part. Ethan has attempted to create a flawless image to gain our trust." Elena's face turned pale, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Ethan remained still, though his eyes darkened and his jaw tightened. "Lucas," Ethan spoke, his deep voice cutting through the tension. "Are you finished?" Lucas shrugged, crossing his arms smugly. "I'm merely presenting the facts. The decision now lies with the investors. Do they want to entrust their money to someone who isn't honest?" Ethan slowly rose to his feet, his gaze sweeping the room. "Lucas is correct," he said, his voice resonating with authority. "I did fabricate this relationship." The room fell silent. Investors exchanged stunned glances. Ethan continued, "I was wrong. I thought I needed a perfect image to impress all of you, to make you believe I was someone worth investing in. But in my pursuit of that perfection, I wronged myself, all of you, and Elena." He turned to Elena, his eyes filled with regret and sincerity. "Elena did not deserve this. She didn't just fulfill the role I hired her for. She went above and beyond. She reminded me that success isn't just about appearances, but about true value on the inside." Taking a deep breath, Ethan redirected his attention to the investors. "I was wrong to think I needed to deceive to make an impression. But my belief in this project and my commitment to it are not lies. Blackwood Enterprises isn't just a company, it's a dream. And I'm willing to risk everything to protect it, even my reputation." The boardroom remained silent, Ethan's words hanging heavily in the air. Despite his admission of failure, his honesty and determination resonated with everyone present. Lucas attempted to interject. "Those are just flowery words, but the fact remains, he deceived you all." Richard Hayes, the eldest and most influential investor in the room, raised a hand to stop Lucas. "Lucas, you've said enough." He turned to Ethan, his sharp eyes studying him closely. "Ethan, what you've just said surprises me, but what impresses me isn't perfection. It's the courage to face your mistakes. I've met many brilliant entrepreneurs, but very few who can stand before their failures and admit them as you just did. Looking around the room, he added, I will invest in Blackwood Enterprises, not because of an image, but because I believe in Ethan's commitment and this company's potential to recover. One by one, the other investors nodded in agreement. Lucas's face turned pale as he realized he had lost. As the meeting ended, Ethan and Elena left the boardroom together. Elena remained quiet, her eyes reflecting a storm of emotions. Elena, Ethan said, stopping before she could walk away, I know I pulled you into an unfair situation, but you stood by me when I needed it most. And that means a lot to me. Elena looked at him, sighing deeply. Ethan, I agreed to help you because of the money, but I didn't expect to be drawn into so much more. Ethan smiled faintly, gratitude shining in his eyes. I can't undo what's happened, but I want to thank you for everything. Whether you choose to leave my world or stay, you'll always have my respect. Elena didn't respond immediately. She turned and walked away, but deep inside she knew that what she and Ethan shared had gone far beyond their original arrangement. A new story might be waiting for them, but it would have to begin with the truth. Chapter 7. A Sweet Ending. After the turbulent storms, Blackwood Enterprises finally overcame its crisis. Thanks to timely investments and Ethan's bold restructuring efforts, the company not only recovered, but also emerged stronger than ever. Ethan had transformed from a controlling, closed-off man making unilateral decisions into someone who listened, valued others' opinions, and cared for the people around him. This transformation didn't just save his company, it changed Ethan himself. Throughout it all, Elena's image remained etched in his mind, not as a mere role, but as the person who helped him rediscover himself. One afternoon in Ethan's office, Elena entered. She still exuded the same confidence and strength as when they first met. But today her gaze was different, thoughtful and cautious. You wanted to see me? Elena asked calmly. Ethan stood and approached her. Gone was the formal suit. He wore a simple white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, appearing relaxed and approachable like never before. Elena, he began in a warm, steady voice, our performance ended a long time ago, but there's something I've never said, and I don't want to keep it to myself any longer. Elena looked at him, slightly furrowing her brows, but she didn't interrupt. I was wrong to drag you into my life the way I did, but of all the mistakes I've made, meeting you was the one thing I got right. You've changed how I see the world, and more importantly, you've changed me. Ethan took a deep breath, looking directly into her eyes. I love you, Elena, not because you helped me save the company, but because of who you are, strong, genuine, and someone who refuses to let anyone define who she is. You may feel like you don't belong in my world, but I want to change that world to make room for you. Will you stay with me? Elena felt her heart race. Ethan's confession wasn't loud or extravagant, but its sincerity was undeniable. Ethan, she said softly but firmly, I always thought I didn't belong in your world, but maybe that doesn't matter. I don't love the millionaire. I love the man behind the facade, the one who learned to be vulnerable and to love. She smiled, her eyes gentle. Yes, I'll stay. Ethan smiled, and for the first time, it was a smile free of the burdens of the past or worries about the future. 2 years later, Ethan and Elena's wedding took place in the garden of Blackwood Estate, a place that had witnessed their most challenging days. The ceremony wasn't lavish, but it was warm and heartfelt. Ethan held Elena's hand tightly as they exchanged vows, his gaze never leaving hers for even a second. The bride, in a simple white dress with her hair cascading softly, looked at him with eyes full of trust and love. They needed nothing more than each other's presence. The story closed with Ethan and Elena walking out of the garden, hand in hand, smiles of pure happiness lighting up their faces. They had overcome lies, challenges, and differences to find truth in their love. Ahead lay a meaningful future, not just for their love, but for how they would live authentically. And the world, with all its complexities and pretense, no longer seemed daunting as long as they had each other. Thank you for following our story. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this journey. Your feedback means the world to us. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share this story with others.